Vic over here,
Off to the side.
off to the side with Easy Street Billiards. Today, I decided that we were going to talk about One Pocket, do a little mini seminar. Kind of waiting for people to get on the school group and add comments and add like topics to cover, so we have a little bit more material. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep kind of doing what I like to do, which is lately I've been playing a little bit more One Pocket, so we're going to talk about One Pocket, which I think is an interesting game. It's probably my favorite game just because of it doesn't really necessarily require you to be good at any particular thing. It requires you to like understand what you're capable of doing, and then using that and understanding what your opponent's capable of doing and not doing specifically, and using that information to help you make strategic decisions. And the purpose of like working on your pool game is to expand your ability to do what you can't do in the game, that if you knew how to do it, you'd be much better. So One Pocket's one of those games where you have to do things that are like not so much that interesting by themselves, but knowing that the skill of having it will then allow you to be just a better prepared player for more scenarios, because in rotation, for instance, it's mainly offense the whole time. 8-ball is the same way. Straight pool is mostly offense. And One Pocket is a more balanced defense to offense, where a defensive strategy of just nullifying your opponent's ability to be offensive is actually one of the ways to change the momentum of the game and allow you then to like create opportunities for yourself, and then use those opportunities to be offensive versus like having to just attack, even if it's like a thin, really difficult situation to be offensive. But playing rotation, there's no other choices some of the time, so you have to take on those bigger risks. In One Pocket, generally speaking, you can find a shot that's low risk if you're smart and you have experience and you have like a well balanced game. And those shots that are lower risk can then just compound you being a little bit more assertive with your style. But that has to do with, like I said, getting experience in playing the game, understanding yourself. So the way that I break the game down, and for those of you that don't know One Pocket, we'll just go through the brief rules section. So you break from the kitchen, you have to choose a pocket, and traditionally speaking, unless you call it, what happens is like if I'm breaking from the right side, it's known without calling it that your pocket is going to be this pocket. And if you're breaking from the left side, then this would be your pocket. So the goal would be to drive the balls towards your hole, and then also not leaving your opponent shots at their hole when it's their turn. So it's kind of a game of like keep away or cat and mouse in a way, where you want to develop your opportunities but minimize your opponent's opportunities. So the way that once you've made 8 balls in your hole, then you win. It's 15 ball rack, so more than half of the balls, that's a win. You can handicap the game in several ways, by just like instead of making 8, you have to maybe make 9 if you're a little bit better, and that allows people that are unequal skill to still compete and have a good like fair chance, kind of like the Fargo, where you give them an extra ball. Now I have to make one more ball than you do, so I might have to make 9, or maybe you only have to make 7, etc. That's more for matchmaking. The even game, which is what most people play for tournaments, which is kind of like being more popularized. There is a lot of gambling in One Pocket, but tournament play is getting more popular as well. So it's basically you break the balls, and then there's going to be 3 phases to the game based on where the balls are at. The way I look at it is like at the beginning of the game, the balls are going to be mostly clustered around the rack, and then towards the middle of the game, you'll see that there's going to be more balls like spread around to the rest of the table, as you just keep kicking balls out away from their hole, etc., to make it harder, and then they end up like over off to the side. And then towards the end of the game, you might have 3 or 4 balls left, and then they're just going to be wherever they may be, randomly placed. A lot of times they'll be like kind of out of play, over here or whatever. and now you're playing for different situations than at the beginning of the game. So it's a good idea, I think, to like start understanding the different like little miniature like cycles of the game, so that you can understand where you need to maybe understand what you're doing and how your goals change throughout the course of the game. So I'm gonna go over the break. I typically like to break from the left side to the right side. You can break from either side, and then the advantage is if I'm breaking to the right side and I'm a right-handed player, what ends up happening is that most of the cut shots are going to be cutting to the left or to the right, but you see how my grip hand is over the table. So when you're shooting towards this hole and you're right-handed, it's easier. So that's an advantage. Now, if I'm right-handed and I break from this side, now if I'm cutting shots like the cue balls here, I might be stretching out. You see how that's, so that it makes it kind of like a little bit of a disadvantage to play to this side when you're right-handed, except for the times when, you know, if you're over here, now you're like, if you're cut, you know, if this is your side, then you can like cut balls to this side easier. So there's like a couple different things, but to me, it's not that important. I play left-handed pretty well, so there was a time when I would break from the right side to the left side to give my opponent the advantage of being able to shoot more easily into their hole, but because I could play left-handed, it wasn't as much of a disadvantage to me. But now I realize that if the opponent's right-handed, you want to actually be making it harder for them by making them shoot to the opposite side. And if it doesn't matter to me, then all things being equal, you have to break to the weaker side of your opponent. So if they're left-handed, you should be breaking to the left if you don't care. But if you're right-handed, you should mostly break to the right. That's kind of like the way it is. So the way the break is, and I'm not going to go through all the breaks, just the ones that I really use. There's like a kick break where you can kick into the ball. The problem is with that is it doesn't move that many balls, and you're not really ending up with a shot. You know, the opponent may have to take like a foul to get out of the initial break, but that's only going to get you one ball. If you foul in this game, any balls that you pocket have to spot, and then any ball you basically lose 1 point. So any balls that you pocketed, one of those will have to come back and spot again. And if you don't have any, then you owe one, and typically you register that by like taking a coin. Like for instance, if this is my hole and I scratch during the game, then I'll put a coin next to my pocket or up here or whatever on this side, so that when I make a ball, then I can like reminder that I owe one, and then I can put that back to spot the ball. Let's see. So I'm gonna break. So the way that I like to break, and most people would say break, is you want to thin the head ball, and the bulk of the energy is going to go into the one ball here, the second ball, and the cue ball is going to travel to the end rail and then up towards the side rail. And the way that you can manipulate that, ideally, I think most people would say that you want the cue ball to end up like between the second and third diamond on this, basically as close to this rail as you can in general, because that basically uses the maximum like bulk of this that's still going to be there to block their ability to get the cue ball to this area here, which is typically the safest place to be. Is like, well, if there's, you know, if the cue ball is in the opponent's pocket, it's going to be hard for them to like, they're going to either have to bank or kick to even move a ball towards their hole, because they can't shoot anything towards their hole without having, you know, when they're in the hole, all the energy is going away. So you have to reverse that, and that's why that's the best place in general to leave the cue ball, is in your opponent's hole, close to that hole. So what I like to do here to kind of affect the balls is put a little bit of right English. That allows me the right English, to me it makes a little bit less energy into the 15, but a little bit more into the second ball. And then when I hit here, instead of it going to the side rail and back to the middle of the table a little bit more, it tends to like reverse here and then come straighter up. Because I do like to play it like to here. So you can break from any of the spots off the rail. If you're having trouble, the main reasons why you might break inside here or outside here, if you're breaking from here, you're going to get more energy this way, like towards your hole, and from here, it's a little bit more of a cut, and you're not going to get as much energy there. But what you do end up with when you break from the middle more, is that if this ball is coming off like down and back up to sell out to where your opponent can cut it, like if you're leaving it here, but this ball comes up to like this spot, they can cut it right in on the first shot, and that's not good. So if that's happening, the way that you can avoid that happening more is by coming in with your cue ball, and then there's just less energy that pushes this ball out because it's more like thinly glancing off the side of it. If that's not a problem, you do want to break typically to be as aggressive as you can without really selling out, is by breaking further out towards the rail. I used to break a lot from here, but I'm kind of moving in more. And then table to table, it's all a little bit different. See, what's another rule on the break? There's another thing. It's like, and this is something you have to talk to your opponent about, or the tournament might specify. In most tournaments now, if you make a ball on the break, then you have to re-rack. If you hit this perfectly, you can hit it, and actually the energy balance of the 10 and 12 pushing into this corner ball is perfect to make it just go in the hole. It's not easy to do, but once you find the spot, and if you rack the balls exactly the same, it's pretty replicatable. But what we really like to do ultimately is not make it, but leave it right in the jaws. That makes it to where you don't have to re-rack the balls. So if you're like getting close to making it, what you just got to do is just deviate slightly what you're doing, and then you'll get that action. Because you want to move as many balls towards your hole as you can on the first shot while not letting your opponent have a shot. So yeah, I'm just gonna visualize my shot here. Let me just break the balls. We'll get on to the most important shot of the game, which is the response to the break. See how that ball kind of crept out. A lot of that means is I probably didn't rack the balls as tightly as I could have. If the balls are perfectly racked, generally speaking, these two balls will be more down here. So the first shot after the break, ideally, I don't have, as being the person that broke the balls, you'd rather be like up here, for instance, and like normally the ball would be here, so that you have to try to, like, my goal is to get now as the person coming in is to get to a safe place here. See, so like when the ball is here already and it's like this is like what I would consider not a very good break, because I can just bank this ball away and then move balls towards my hole. So that's basically the break. And then what you're trying to do here is just make it hard for my opponent to make balls. So for instance, you gotta like learn how to bank the balls with control and speed. You can't just like fly at this and hit it hard and come into these balls and not know where they're gonna go and have your cue ball like go loose, because if I leave my cue ball like up here, then and I don't make a ball, now my opponent has an easy shot, and I don't want that to happen. So you have to be very diligent in this game about playing position for your cue ball and your object ball. Most of the time, a lot of the innings, you're not going to be making a ball, so then they're all still going to be there, and you have to try to control that as best you can, and that's the art, kind of the art of the game, which is that on this shot here, for instance, I can select from a lot of different positions that I'd like the cue ball to be. So what I would tell most people that are new is you got to go to the place where you think it might be a good place to leave it, and then see what it looks like. Like for instance, if I left the cue ball right here, like bank this ball over to wherever it ended up, and then the cue ball went to here, you'd think that's a good shot. But the problem is that if you come to this spot here and you look around, you'll see that maybe they can bank the 15. I mean, if it was here, for sure, this is not really a great place. So then you'd almost want to be higher. But really, the thing is that knowing that that's where you want to be, well, like what would make it to where that bank doesn't exist anymore, there'd be a risk, which is that if somehow like you bank these balls up, like bank the 5 over and then this ball got moved up to like here, now they can't just leave it wherever. You see what I mean? So you gotta think about all the things that your opponent might do as much as you can before you shoot your shot. But a lot of it comes down to just like you kind of know, because you know what you want, and really your opponent wants the opposite of that. So it's not like it's that difficult. You know, on this shot, I may try to make the 4 by banking it straight across, because that allows me then to just play my cue ball. And if the 4 doesn't go, it's fine, as long as my cue ball is pretty safe. So I'm just going to bank this across. Yeah, see, I played it up too high. Like I said, I wasn't really playing as tightly. This is a spot where you basically, now you're just playing an offense where you're trying to make 3 and then make these balls. So once there's less balls on the table, you might get to a situation where the stack starts to get broken away, and now you're like more in the middle of the game. And now what you ended up with is more of the situations where you can't run all the balls necessarily. Maybe, you know, you have 3, your opponent has 2, you know, and then now some of the balls are down there, some are there. So now what you're trying to do is move the balls to a place where you can actually maybe make them later, you know. So if you like, you know, and you're moving balls away from your opponent's hole too. So like if this is my hole on this shot, the most of the time, the best shot to do is just move the 10 away and then move it to a place where you can then shoot it in your hole. So part of it's like thinking about the balls is like, which one of these balls are friendly to me and which ones of them are friendly to my opponent, as far as like easier to make and more powerful as like a tool. You know, if you look at this here, you can see that the 7 is wired into that hole. So this whole cluster favors my opponent. Well, actually, in this situation, it's me, because this is my hole. So I would be just shooting the shot right away, even though the 10 is here. If this was like this and didn't go, now I would for sure be, you know, banking the 10, thinking about, okay, the 11 is my friend too, so I'm going to try to keep my cue ball from being able to like hitting that ball and moving the 10. So I might shoot a shot like, maybe what I'll do is play my cue ball up to here to take away my opponent's opportunity to do anything with his friendly balls, which are these 2 balls. And then I can then, like, you know, just bump the 10 up to that rail and leave it to where I can bank it later potentially. You know, I might try to move a ball to like this area if this is my hole, so that if my opponent scratches, then I can take ball in hand here behind the line and shoot the ball that's right here all the way down and use that to play position. So that's like a future scenario where you're trying to hook up your future self a little bit in this game all the time, because you can't really do anything that amazing right now normally. Your opponent, if they're doing a good job, is taking away all your easy opportunities, and now what you're forced to do is create opportunities for yourself. So a lot of that's like, well, I have to like, okay, if I'm trying to create an opportunity, what does my opponent do? They're doing the same thing for themselves. So it becomes a little bit of a battle of like, you know, technique and strategy, where you're shooting shots in the middle game, especially where you're trying to lay the foundation for a run for later. If you're doing it properly, you don't necessarily just shoot to try to make one ball without being able to make multiple balls. At the end of the game, when you only have 2 or 3 balls left, that is pretty much what you're doing, is you're playing to make one ball at a time. But in this situation, you'd love to be able to make multiple balls, because there are more balls in play. If you were to be able to get shape on the 11, maybe you can break these balls out, you can bank the 10 over or whatever. You can run more balls, so you should be trying to play for a situation to like get yourself there. You know, so this, you know, shots like this are just not going to come up playing 8 ball, where you're not trying to make the 10. You're not trying to so you're trying to, you got to like play the speed of the shot and all that. So this is one of those reasons why this is a good game to play, because it teaches you how to play both balls and being precise with it. Because what you can do is you can manipulate your like high ball, low ball, draw, or right or left to like apply a little bit less or more energy to the cue ball or the 10 ball when they interact with each other, to move them just a little bit more and be a little bit more nuanced, versus just like if I was trying to make the 10 in that hole, I'm forced to like hit right in this spot in order to make that the most important thing. But now, well, like what I'm going to do is try to like hit the 10 in this general region so that it banks. And there's like, how many shots to do that? There's so many. I could shoot right into the rail and float over, or I could shoot straight at the ball and then make it go 2 rails to that spot. And then now what I got to do is decide between those 2 shots, what's the better position that I can leave the cue ball in. And what I like to do here is actually probably just draw this back, and actually the way this shot is, I wouldn't want to necessarily play it here. This shot, I'd be developing that first situation I was talking about, where it's leaving it up here, where I can bank it towards that spot with the speed, and then I can just draw my cue ball back to this end rail, and then it takes away most of my opponent's shots. The main shot they might try to shoot is like bank the 8, but then I have the 11 here, so that's kind of like, maybe you don't want to shoot that shot. I mean, it depends on who you are. You know, that's part of the game. I can't stop you from shooting at anything that goes. My main thing that I'm going to do is try to create a better opportunity for myself if you screw up. So from here, yeah, you can try to bank the 8 if you want to. You can try to bank this 6 ball 2 rails, but the 3 is blocking. This is like where I left the cue ball here in this situation. The only thing is like, well, I did leave an edge of the 11, but the problem is, and this is where the strategy comes in, if you do anything with the 11, then you're leaving this bank on the 3 or the bank on the 15 if you're not careful. So you have to be very, where am I leaving the ball all the time? And I think that with one pocket, that's one of the great things to do, is that you have to like constantly be wary of where you're leaving the cue ball. You can't just put it wherever you want, you know, and then just expect that to be the best spot. You gotta like spend energy deciding what's really the best place for it, and then what's easy. You know, it's not just like what's the best for it. You know, if you could just leave the cue ball like frozen to a ball, or frozen to, you know, like sitting in the jaws every time, or frozen to a rail every time, that's really good. You know, but you have to develop the skill to do that and to see when it's not possible, you know, because you want to be able to accomplish your shots. So, is there anybody on? Any comments?
No comments.
Yeah, if anybody has anything to add or questions to talk, get in there. I'm pretty much going to talk about 1 or 2 more things. I mean, there's so many like situations that come up in one pocket that you could talk about, but I just want to do like a generic overview of the game. So we're about to get into the end game, which basically, you know, you might be playing where now, and this is kind of gets to be where you got to understand the score too. Like say we're here right now in the game, which is this pocket has 6 balls, and then the other pocket has 2, and say now the balls are more like, this would be like common, like getting to the end game. And this kind of situation is like, you got, if you're the person that only has 2 here, you might not be liking it, because now your opponent is taking away your ability to run balls, because there's really not that many shots that can be made at all. You know, so like in these situations, you're definitely trying to make balls when you can, and then what you end up with is like, well, say I'm going to shoot this 15 bank. What I got to do then is, if I don't make it, I don't want to leave an easy bank for my opponent. And easy in one pocket is really a lot trickier than you think. Like if I bank the ball, you know, and I hit it a little bit narrow and it ends up like here, if my cue ball is here, that was like, you know, they're almost always, a good player is going to make this bank shot back to their hole all the time, to where it's not worth it to shoot a shot like that. So in order to like shoot a bank and play it to like leave yourself in those kinds of situations, you need to be leaving the cue ball such that it's very difficult to like do much. You know, even like this situation here where you think, oh, that's pretty tough. But it's really, the thing about one pocket is I don't have to make the ball. I just have to move your ball away. So you can't just leave them something like that. You need to get like where you're like, you leave them like this, you know, or like actually really want to be like here. Where now there's not much that can be done. That's the thing. Or ideally, another thing, if you can see it there, but I mean, if you're like hooking them on the ball, when you bank it and leave it to where it's tough here, where they can't even access it now, you know, you might shoot like, I might be forced to like shoot this kick shot where I have to kick behind, you know, behind the ball and try to kick it away and then hope that nothing bad happens here. Like, see, if that was what I was doing, kicking it away from there, you know, it's just like, well, now I've just left this return bank where I can just bank the 3, you know. And that was the whole shot, was not to make this 15 necessarily, but to leave myself another easy opportunity to make that ball. It gets to be where you like you can't really care about one shot because so many times you're like leaving the ball, you know, like, I almost made it, and then the guy just comes over, you know, and from here, you know, you can make this ball if you hit it right. You can kick at it with left English. Even, you know, I'm gonna try this left-handed, but you know, if I hit it a little bit better, that could be like over here. You know, and I don't like that shot necessarily all the time because the cue ball gets loose, and then if I don't hit it good and make it like to this spot, then you can just cut it back in. But where that ball was is not nearly dangerous for me. Like you can just shoot straight into it and knock it out. You know, even though it's like who knows where it's gonna go, it's not in there. You know, in there has to be like, you know, in the hole. Those kinds of shots you can't get them out because with one pocket, you start learning those kids. Like from where can I actually get this ball out? What can I do with this ball when it's this close? You know, and from here you start looking at like, okay, if my opponent this is their last ball and now I need to get this out of here in order to stay alive, you start looking at like, okay, if I kick into the rail and I hit right here, it's going to bounce, and then where's my cue ball going to be at? And that's the thing that you start learning about really nuanced, like you can actually aim to hit the point and then bank this ball back towards your hole if you're aggressive enough. That's not necessarily the right shot, but if you shoot something similar to that, you might get lucky and that might happen, you know. So for this shot, I can kick it back to the side, kind of over to my hole, even though it looks like my opponent is in a good spot. It's like not really that good. You know, like this is something that's totally doable. And if you look at this cue ball, you see that the speed that I hit it at was such that now it's like total reversal. And you might have felt good about where you left it, but it's nothing. In one pocket, if it's not in the hole, you don't really have anything locked in, you know. That's the thing. You can, which is one of the reasons why some people don't like the game, because you have create expectation that things are going to happen, and it just, the other guy is not letting that. That's not how it works. You have to fight for all of it. You know, if you're not in there to fight for it, you're probably going to lose, because if the other person is, they will do all that stuff and learn all those shots. And that's what the thing that's tough about one pocket is, there's unlimited things to really learn, you know, that are useful. And then the nice thing about it is that once you learn all those shots, now when you're playing rotation, you understand situations that you never would have even thought about had you just played rotation only. And that's kind of the reason to play other games, is to learn how to do shots that you won't learn because they're not really useful all of the time. It's probably the best way to use it, but like situationally speaking, it's worth knowing because you never know when you might need to do something like that, you know. And plus it's just something to do. It's like if you know, I think that playing the same game every day can get a little bit repetitive, and that if you want to you know, do something a little bit different, you can play some one pocket and you'll see it's a totally different game. You know, play some banks or something once in a while, and then you're like, oh dang, I could learn a lot really quickly by playing this game, because it's forcing me, in order to be intelligent about my play, to learn how to do things differently than I was. I think most people do not spend as much energy playing both of the balls, and then when you're forced to do that when you're playing in a rotation and you're playing safety. That's what you're doing. But in one pocket, you're doing that almost every single shot. And by understanding that that's kind of like one of the levels that you can play is you can just like don't think about the game so much, but think about the action that you're doing. Then it's more about like, do I know how to make these balls go the way I want them to? Because it's like in one pocket, say for instance that 15 wasn't even there, and then I wanted to make this 12 ball, I could actually shoot it into this rail, and then play it 3 rails up towards the hole, and I need to be as accurate or more as I would to just pocket the ball, and I would be having to play the speed of the shot as well. And that's one of the things that is amazing, is that you can really like learn how to do things that are not really necessarily that difficult. They just require you to think a little bit differently about what you're doing. Instead of being tunnel visioned on pocketing, you're more like, I need to like make sure that my cue ball is always being taken care of as well as the shot itself. So that's one of the things that I really think is great about it. And then, as you develop your skills, you'll have your own style of play, because, you don't hardly ever have to go for it. In one pocket, part of the fun of it is not knowing if your opponent is going to shoot the shot you hope that they shoot. Because sometimes you want them to shoot a shot, because if they make a mistake, then it's way easier. And as long as they're shooting a shot that they're not making a mistake on, it's always tough. So like really what you're waiting for is for people to make mistakes. And against like people that are good, they're not going to make that many mental mistakes. Mostly they're going to make like physical mistakes if they're going for too much, and then I think that as you're like not as good, you won't see that, you could have done a different shot that would have been better. But a lot of that has to do with just like learning your own game. It's like it's better is very, non-specific, I would say. Once you've done it, you'd be like, oh yeah, I see. But then some of the time it isn't that way. So with one pocket, a lot of it's like learning how to tease your opponent, so to speak, by learning what their tendencies are, and then understanding, oh, okay, they like to shoot these kinds of shots, but they don't make them when they shoot them. Their ego just tells them that this is what they have to do here, and they haven't really learned how to do the shot yet. So I'm going to leave it for them, hoping that they do it and miss it, and then it leaves it easy for me. And that becomes like one of the quests for one pocket players, is to find your opponent's like little weaknesses, and then just give them those spots to be in, and then eventually you gain an advantage, because you're constantly leaving your opponent in situations that they're not shooting the shot that they could shoot. Not that they should shoot necessarily, but by knowing that a better opportunity that exists than the one that they're going to take, that's pretty much should be telling you that you're above their level, at least for like understanding that specific situation. The situations change. But if you can find a situation where you have an advantage over your opponent in one pocket, that's huge. And then things like 9 ball, 10 ball, none of that really matters. Each rack is pretty simple. There's like, there's like tough shots that occur in situations where you have to have like a lot of knowledge, like maybe you're kicking multiple rails at a ball, or you have to bank, multiple rails or whatever for that situation, which are pretty rare, I'd say, in rotation. But in one pocket, they're like not so rare. So that's what's great about it, is you can really like test yourself, but you have to definitely sign up to like really not know what you're doing. And then when you play against someone that does kind of know what they're doing, it's a struggle, to say the least, because you don't know how you're getting beat, because you can't see deeply enough. And that's just part of the fun of it, is like when you're playing against an older person that's been playing one pocket for like 30 years, if they're pretty seasoned, you'll learn a lot if you just watch what they do. And that's what makes One Pocket fun. Is it actually is fun to watch, in my opinion. Once you see, okay, what would I do in that situation? You have to be versed enough in the game to know, okay, if the balls are here, what am I going to do? And then when you see the balls like that and someone else is shooting, when they shoot their shot, that's their expression of who they are, and you're like, whoa, dang, that was cool. And then maybe you could, that adds to your knowledge, because mostly it's not a shot you can't do. That's the thing. It's almost always it's a shot that you know how to do, and you just didn't see it. And that's what's amazing about One Pocket, is there's so much of it is application of information at the right time. And that becomes part of the trick of it, and that's part of the fun of it. It's like 9-ball is more about like everybody knows what to do. The question is, have you put enough time in to do it? One Pocket's like nobody knows what to do. That's the thing. Everybody can do all the shots. It's not that it's not the same, because your risk factor and all that chooses. You can play safe all the time, every shot, and that's like normal, is to play a little bit of safe every time. Unless you're going to make the ball, in which case you go for it, right? And that is a strategy. Or you can just shoot regardless of not thinking about any of that. That's the thing, is all that, it ultimately is your choice, which is great about One Pocket. You can't really do that in 9-ball. You just have to play pretty aggressive all the time. You got to play safe when you got to play safe. But if the balls are open, you should be trying to go for it. It's One Pocket's not like that, where you don't necessarily have to go for it. If I shoot a shot that's missable and I miss, now I'm leaving my opponent an opportunity to really erase any good things that I had going for myself. So it's like, if I want to protect that, then I have to play a different shot if I might miss. In 9-ball, you're like, well, if I miss, then I might lose. I might get lucky. In One Pocket, when you miss, sometimes you get lucky, but mostly you're leaving your opponent, a good opportunity. And that, giving that away is not good. And I think that teaching yourself that there's a consequence for that sort of behavior, even in 9-ball, it's kind of like a little bit of a mistake to be, just kind of less strategic about it, because it's like, well, if you learn how to be strategic, then it's just a habit that you have forever. You don't have to try anymore to be strategic, but you did have to learn how to do it at the beginning, and One Pocket is pretty much the game that if you learn how to be strategic, that it pays the most benefits, because then you don't have to shoot hard shots the whole time that are stressful. You just shoot easy shots that you've selected that you can do, and then that's a solid game, and that could be your style. So I don't know if I have anything else about that.
Just one person on.
Just one person on? What time is it?
10:41.
Yeah, so I guess I can go over a couple situations, like things that I would say to practice when you're playing One Pocket would be learning how to play in the beginning of the game. A good skill to have is to learn how to thin off the stack and play your line, to go and leave your cue ball a little bit more accurately. And this is this is really good for learning how to play safe, playing rotation. But this is every day in One Pocket, where you might you're gonna thin off the ball. See, I fit it too thin and came up too high. This is where it's you gotta practice this kind of stuff. If I'm just trying to thin off this 15 and leave it in the stack, I want to, you playing the speed of it, you could hit it harder if you're confident, move the balls towards your hole. That stuff like that comes up where you really are learning how to be delicate, because you want to leave your cue ball in a certain spot. Say I want to leave my cue ball up over here. You can learn how to really hit the ball pretty softly and with control, and that's a really good thing to learn for playing all pool games. It's just that in 9-ball, it's rarely used, and that's kind of an underdeveloped skill. And I just can't stress more how if you want to develop your pool game, playing different games than just the ones that you compete at will help you, because it kind of gives you a fresh eye if you let it, and that can rejuvenate your like interest in pool, and it teaches you things that you'll learn that if you didn't practice it outside of the sport, you wouldn't necessarily learn it. You know, it's just like the difference between like if you're in this situation here playing 9-ball, yeah, you can cut the ball in, but if you like spend enough time playing one pocket, you're pretty much gonna nail the spank like 90+%. It's easier probably than cutting it. This shot is very missable, but the bank is also missable. But if you've developed your speed control and your positioning off of bank shots, which you will in one pocket, then you can shoot this shot and play shape off of it as easily or more easily than cutting it in the side. And that's just one example of millions of examples of like how you're learning shots that don't occur as often in 9-ball because you don't know them, not because they're not there. You know, if you knew the shot was there because you've seen it in a different game, that exact movement of the balls, and then you'd be like, oh, strategically this makes sense in 9-ball now because I know this shot. Before I wasn't so comfortable with it, so I wouldn't even consider it as an option. But now that I've played one pocket, I can see that it's totally doable. In fact, routine in one pocket. So now when I shoot this shot, I have much more confidence. You know, so and it's, you know, a lot of it's like, well, this is banks as well. You know, when you're banking, playing banks, you know, these kinds of shots are like the ones that you love to see. This is like you're hoping for this one. And you know, when you're playing rotation, you don't ever want to necessarily bank, which is strange, right? It's just the way it is. You know, you feel like a straight in ball is what you need to have, but then, you know, when you're good at banks, you're not scared of it like you were. Then it becomes like more routine, and then you can, you know, that's the development where you just like are more comfortable in more situations. And I think that, you know, playing one pocket definitely gets you there where you always know that there's going to be something you can do, and maybe not great, maybe it's just going to keep you alive for like half a second longer, but that's better than just losing right there. If you have to practice that. Anyways, hope you all got some benefit. I think that's pretty much it, unless we have any comments.
No comments.
Any future comments we'll definitely read. We appreciate everybody. Let's see what else we're doing. We're doing a giveaway.
Yeah, t-shirt giveaway on the Facebook.
If you track down on our Facebook, we're doing a giveaway on December 7th for a t-shirt. All you have to do is follow the Facebook, comment, and emoji the post, right?
Comment ESB
Comment ESB
on the giveaway.
on the giveaway. All that information is on the post, so if you just follow the directions there, you don't have to listen to me at all. If you want a chance at the t-shirt. Also, we're doing free shipping through the end of the month. Basically, I think through the 4th we're going to do it. We did a collaboration with the tournament, the Eric Sawyer Memorial Tournament. So we did a t-shirt design for them, and we're doing free shipping for anything that people buy with the code that is there, and that's all on a separate post through the Facebook. So if you all are on Facebook with us, you can take advantage of that. And then we're doing a school group, so if you have interest in that, you can go in the pinned link. Yeah, it's in the comments. And that's how you can do, if you want me to talk about something other than this, all you have to do is literally comment and I will talk about it. That's how easy it is. So anyways, I hope you all have a great day. Thank you so much.